Good morning, Ms. Spence.
Good morning.
How are you?
I think I have the requisite amount of nerves for the occasion, but,
That's good.
but I'm very, very privileged to be here, so thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Nerves are good, they keep you on your toes.
Thank you.
You were born in the very city where you wish to be appointed.
That's correct.
That's good. You did pupillage in 2010 in Gqeberha.
I did.
And, well, after graduating with an LLB from what is known as Nelson Mandela University today.
That's correct.
But before you did LLB, you studied science and were quite good at it by all accounts.
Thank you. Yes, I did.
You did a BSc and majored in microbiology and zoology, then did honors in zoology and wrote a thesis in ecotoxicology, and then made this dramatic switch.
I did.
And pivoted to law. That's quite unusual. May I ask what brought that on?
Yes, certainly. During my honours year, we had to give various presentations, and one of the presentations which I gave had to do with the differences between the economic impact, the environmental impacts between pebble bed reactors and normal power plants. And when I approached the topic, I did it through the lens of the law, and I looked at different judicial decisions from around the world, and really that ignited my passion for the legal profession, and that was when I decided to make the change.
Wow. All right. Can you just tell us some pupils, women pupils,
Yes, I have. I've been very privileged to be able to do that.
and did a magnificent job with that, as it seems.
Thank you so much.
So you've been with the Eastern Cape Society of Advocates since?
Yes, I have.
All right. You have acted in the High Court?
I have. As we sit here today, I'm presently in my 42nd week of acting.
In which seats particularly?
Sorry?
Where exactly? Where have you acted?
I
In Port Elizabeth?
my post is at the Gqeberha High Court. However, what happens in the Eastern Cape is that we rotate between the different seats of the court. So I've also done duty in Mthatha and Bishu and Makanda.
What kind of cases have you done? I imagine you'd have done a first spread on criminal and commercial work as well.
Yes, I've done the full spread of cases that come to the Eastern Cape bench. So I've sat in criminal matters, I've sat in civil trials, opposed applications, urgent applications, unopposed applications, a bail appeal, and I've written various criminal review judgments.
Have you sat on appeals proper?
I have sat on appeals. I've done 2 weeks of appeals.
All right. Full benches?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Sorry, I meant full court?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, okay. Have you had an opportunity to write judgments during your acting stint?
Yes, I have had an opportunity to write judgments. I have delivered 40 written judgments to date.
That's commendable. Any managed to get in the law reports?
Yes, I have. I have 4 reported judgments at present.
All right, I'll stop there for now and hand over to the rest of the commissioners.
Thank you.
No one has indicated. Oh, my goodness, I'm sorry I've not done this in a few months. I forgot that I have to give first dibs to the head of court. who is represented by Judge Bloom. Judge Bloom, do you have questions for the candidate?
Sorry, I do.
Just bring the mic close to you, please.
Thank you. You've touched on the judgments that you have written, if I am correct, 40 in all.
Yes,
Can we just break them down? I have made some notes. 17 opposed applications,
that's correct, Judge Bloom.
10 civil trials,
That's correct.
then criminal trials, you've had 3 of those.
I've had 2 criminal trials, but written 3 criminal judgments. The one criminal trial was a multiple murder trial. The second was an alleged rape of a minor. The third judgment is the sentencing in respect of the murder trial.
And then criminal reviews, you've had 5 of those.
That's correct.
And 1 appeal judgment.
That's correct.
You have made mention when the Deputy Chief Justice asked you about reported judgments. I have made a note of 4 of those,
That's correct.
and 2 of them have been referred to with approval in Lawson.
That's indeed so.
Yes. Then can we just deal with comments? You might not know this, but the Judge President in the Eastern Cape has requested judges to comment on your nomination, and I am informed that not a single judge made negative comments about you. To the contrary, the Deputy Judge President in Gqeberha has sent me to the Judge President, a letter, and with your permission...
Deputy Chief Justice, we are struggling to hear.
Can you just try to speak directly to the mic, Judge
Thank you.
Bloom?
Am I audible now?
We can hear you, but when you look at the candidate, then you speak away from the mic.
Sorry, thank you. The Deputy Judge President in the Eastern Cape, in Gqeberha, has sent comments, and I'm not going to read everything, but just a few things. Colleagues who have interacted, he says, with her, and referring to you, have commented very positively on her abilities as a judge, her work ethic, her integrity, her positive outlook, and what is clearly evident, her love for the law and her work. I'm not going to ask you to comment on it, but feel free to do so.
Thank you.
She has an impressive work ethic, and there was earlier this year an occasion, sadly so, when one member of the judiciary in the Eastern Cape fell ill, and you had to get into your car and travel to that division.
That's correct,
You
sir.
want to share that experience with us, please?
Yes, certainly. It was actually a wonderful experience. I had spent a week in Johannesburg on the aspirant judges training course, and it was on the last day that the JP informed me that one of the members of the bench had fallen ill at the Mthatha High Court, and would I make myself available to go through there on the Sunday and to do the motion court duty role. And for anybody who knows, the motion court duty role in Mthatha is certainly a formidable force. There are many, many files. On the unopposed role, it is not uncommon for there to be 100 unopposed applications and 8 opposed applications in that week, which you need to field along with many urgent applications that come your way. So I arrived back in Gqeberha on the Friday night and got in my car on the Sunday morning to drive through to Mthatha to prepare those files and take up those duties.
Then, can we just proceed? 1 or 2 more excerpts from the letter. She has, in my view, all the attributes to make an excellent judge, and he concludes by saying, I have no reason to doubt that her integrity and her moral ethical standards are above reproach, and that she will serve the Constitution and the task of the judiciary well. I have accordingly no hesitation to recommend the appointment of Advocate Bands to the vacant position. You want to comment to that?
Thank you. I'm very, very humbled by those comments. Thank you very much.
Then can we just deal with the report submitted by Nadal?
Certainly.
You have appeared in both the Constitutional Court and in the Supreme Court of Appeal, and from the documentation, you appeared as a junior with Advocate, Mr. Bielefeld SC.
Correct.
Now, there are questions about you not having appeared yourself on behalf of your clients, and you were led by a silk. I have had occasion yesterday to speak to Mr. Bielefeld about that. I'd like you to share with us who drafted those heads in both courts.
I drafted the heads of argument in both courts.
And what was his contribution towards those heads of argument?
It's a difficult question to answer. I don't want to say anything negative, but the heads of argument which I drafted were unchanged. They were accepted as they were.
Yes. And why did you not appear yourself?
I did not appear by myself because I was invited to be Advocate Bielefeld's junior. He asked me to come on board to assist him in those matters. Those were not matters that I had originally been briefed in.
Thank you. Just one last aspect. Can we just deal with the position in Gqeberha? At the moment, we have 2 female judges, and we have 5 male judges in Gqeberha.
That's correct.
And when we talk of racial composition, we have 2 white males.
That's correct.
And the rest of the complement are black in the sense of Xhosa and colored.
That's correct, Judge Blom.
We have lost, over the last 2 years in the Eastern Cape, through retirement, Judges Skuman and Revelas, and elevation to the Supreme Court of Appeal, Judge Goosen. How do you think your appointment will assist with diversity on the bench of the Eastern Cape?
Thank you, Judge Blom. What the Constitution provides is that there is a need that the bench in a division, broadly speaking, is representative of the gender and the racial composition of the community in which it serves. And as pointed out by Judge Blom, there are currently no white females serving on the bench, and accordingly, that would certainly be in line with transformation. So I certainly feel that my appointment would be welcome, 1, from a racial perspective, and 2, also on a gender perspective.
Deputy Chief Josh, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge Blom. Premier, do you have questions for the candidate?
Thank you very much, DCJ. No, not really. Judge Blom has almost covered me. I was more interested on the question on demographics. I think Advocate has attended to that. So far, thank you very much, DCJ.
All right. Okay. AP Beze?
Thank you, DCJ. Good morning, Advocate Pence.
Good morning.
Supposing you were presiding in a civil trial concerning a delictual claim, what would be the test applicable to establish negligence, as was restated in Kruger versus Coetzee?
Certainly, thank you. And I'm going to paraphrase. I'm not going to say it exactly as stated in Kruger versus Coetzee, but what the court to determine negligence will need to determine is whether a reasonable man would reasonably foresee the harm that's complained of, whether his conduct would cause that harm, and whether he took reasonable steps to guard against such an occurrence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And my second and last question to you. You are sitting in an appeal against sentence. The basis for the appeal being that the sentence is excessive. What is the test or approach to an appeal against sentence, as was, for example, restated in many cases? The one that comes to mind, even State versus Malchus.
Sorry, I've drawn a blank there in a moment. If you're looking at sentencing and you're looking at it from an appeal perspective, for example, if a minimum sentence is applicable in the circumstances, one needs to revisit whether there were substantial and compelling circumstances to deviate from the minimum sentence applicable. So one needs to look at the discretion which the court had at the time and the factors which the court considered.
And as a general rule, where the minimum sentences legislation finds no application, what would be the approach?
Was the exercise of the discretion judicial in the circumstances? So was there a material misdirection of the court quo?
Thank you. I'll leave it at that.
Commissioner Singh?
Thank you very much, DCJ, and good morning once again. Good morning, Advocate Vance.
Good morning.
I'm on the virtual platform. I see that in addition to what Judge Blom said about letters that came through, Nadel required one of us to raise the issue that you do not seem to belong to a member of any legal association. Not that I personally think that it matters, but can you just take us through? You received a nomination from Advocates for Transformation, but there's nothing listed as a member of any legal organization. Do you want to just tell us about that, please, first? Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity to address that question. How I've always viewed memberships of legal associations or any other association is that when you become a member, it's not merely to have the association behind your name. You need to have the time to be able to meaningfully engage with the society and the objects of the society. And if you do not have that, then you ought not to become a member. So when we're looking at what's close to my heart, one of those aspects, and I'm sure we'll get to that topic later, is transformation. So instead of joining AFT, what I felt I could do was I could make a difference at the rock face. So what was the impact that I could make on a bar level for transformation? And that's where I focused my energy. I have in the interim, however, been approached by Saula at the end of last year, and they asked me if I would be interested in joining the association, to which I gave them an answer in the affirmative. I do have an interest in joining the association, and certainly now that this is the third term which I've acted for consecutive terms, and it certainly lends itself more to a more structured environment to be able to contribute more meaningfully to an organization. So that it is certainly something that I will take up.
Okay, just as a follow-up, can you tell us how much of energy you've devoted to the transformation cause in whatever platform that was available to you?
Yes.
I noticed a letter here from Ms. Sestala, and I was hoping that you would want to take her up to the position, mentor her up to the position that you are in now, appearing before the JSC. So can you speak to those aspects, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely, and she would certainly be every bit capable of taking up that position in due course. So I think, let me answer the question in two parts. First, what does transformation mean to me? And then two, what have I done for transformation? So people often talk to me about this topic because it is close to my heart, and the only way that I can explain what transformation means to me is to bring in Ubuntu. I am because we are, and that is how I've always viewed our life. So transformation isn't just what people think. It's not about briefing patterns. It's not about just getting somebody's foot in the door. It's about fostering relationships. It's about bringing it home, and then it spills over into the workplace and into the legal community. It's about an open door policy. It's about providing mentoring, opportunities, introductions to attorneys, and just taking a considered interest in the life of the person who you are hoping to enhance in whatever way you can, whether that be financially or by virtue of the time that you are able to give to that. So what have I done for transformation? You would have noted from the documents that I submitted together with the questionnaire, there were 2 letters of support that were written by 2 young females who are now practicing attorneys in Gqeberha. One is Nwabisa and the other one is Lily. Now, Nwabisa I met at the age of 10 years old, and she showed promise in the academic sector. So I took her under my wing. My then husband at the time, we put her into a better school to provide her with a better education. We paid for her studies, her books, her extra learning so that she was able to understand English, because her English, she wasn't very fluent at the time. She then showed an interest in tertiary education, which she was so very capable of, and she went on to study an LLB. I invited her to come and work for me as a legal secretary. The reason for that was twofold. One, she could be at the face of practice and she could get the necessary experience and see what it was like to be in practice. And 2, it enabled her to build relationships with attorneys and other advocates, which would afford her a stepping stone into the profession. I'm not sure if I need to go into with Naledi, but similarly, it was, Naledi and I met each other at the gym, and at the time she was working for Red Bull, and she indicated to me that she was very interested in a career in law. And I said to her at the time, she was a first-year student, that Nwabisa was about to move on. She had just been accepted for articles, and I encouraged her to come and work for me, again, as a legal secretary, for the same reasons that I encouraged Nwabisa to do so. And I'm proud to say she went on to do law school and her articles, and she's currently serving pupillage at the Gqeberha bar. Apart from that, because that's not the only contribution that I've made, I have an open door policy at all times for everybody who needs to come or wants to see me. I avail myself for lecturing, for checking young advocates' work, introductions, passing down briefs, because at the end of the day, what we need is a sustainable practice. If we're truly going to transform the legal profession, it's not sufficient to sit on a pupillage committee and, for example, take 6 young black women if you don't give them the tools to have a sustainable practice in due course. That's the only way that will transform the profession.
Thank you, Advocate Benz, and thank
you.
you, Deputy Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. JP Mlambo.
Thank you very much, DCJ. Good morning, Advocate Benz.
Good morning, JP.
You mentioned that you've acted in opposed motions as well.
Yes.
I've got a 2-pronged question. One is, do you agree with me that the opposed motions, which also have what we call special opposed motions, that is the complex and lengthy ones, that's where judges mostly accumulate reserve judgments?
Correct.
What was your average turnaround time in terms of hearing an opposed matter and handing down the judgment, on average?
On average, I would say about 2 months.
About 2 months. Good. And do I have a follow-up, DCJ? The rule is just 2 questions. It's a bit constraining, but anyway. You also confirmed that you've said in full court appeals. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's where you were considering a judge's judgment.
Yes.
Did you have occasion to write any of those appeal judgments?
I've written appeal judgments, but not for the full appeal court, no. Not for sitting as 3 judges.
Okay. My last question, that's my second question. Those were follow-ups. It's a different question. You are a single parent, you have a 9-year-old or 10-year-old child.
That's correct.
You're coming to the bench. Are you fully aware what you're going into from an income perspective?
Yes, certainly I'm fully aware.
Then you are prepared to take the consequences.
I am. Thank you, JP.
Thank you,
Coming
DCJ.
to the, I think if I may just answer that question a little bit more in depth. I haven't availed myself for this position for financial considerations. It is a deep calling of service, and that is why I'm here. And on that basis, I'm more than satisfied for the financial implications which taking up a position has.
Thank you, Advocate Benz. Thank you, DCJ.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Justice. Good morning, Advocate Benz.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Okay, you spoke a lot about transformation, and I commend you for that.
Thank you.
But what I want to know, there's very few women who are appointed silk.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
There are very few female practitioners who get silk status. Silk status?
Yes.
Do you think the criteria that we are using now to recommend people for silk, is it sufficient or there's something wrong? Because as long as we don't get enough females to take up silk, we are not transforming.
Yes, I can only speak from a perspective of the Gqeberha bar, and certainly we've within the recent years, had 2 females who have taken up silk, and no other female has really availed themselves for that position as of yet. So, unfortunately, I can't really speak to that.
Thank you. I'm fine.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ndwaitu?
Thank you, Deputy Chief Justice. Good morning, Advocate Benz.
Good morning.
You were asked earlier questions about the common law in delict and the sort of common law approach to application of sentence on the criminal side. I want to ask you also legal questions, but from a customary point of view. If you had a case where there is a contested rule about custom, what approach would you follow and what are the leading cases?
Unfortunately, I haven't had an occasion to consider that, and unfortunately, I'm unable to answer that when it comes to customary law.
Yes. The reason I ask this is not to trap you, but you are going to the Eastern Cape, which is a primarily rural province, and the overwhelming majority of people there are under the rule of customary law. And there is an overwhelming number of cases that are before the courts where customary law is sought to be applied. And I am always worried that judges are very ignorant when it comes to customary law. And customary law has become the ugly stepsister of the common law, which is a violation of the Constitution on its own, because Section 39(2) expressly says customary law is part of South African law. So whenever I see a judge who just says, well, I know nothing about customary law, I get a bit worried. Are you going to take any steps to educate yourself about customary law?
Yes, I absolutely will, and thank you for that. I think the starting point is always going to be the facts of the case that you presented with, and so I'll deal with the matter that I'm presented with as I do with any other matter that comes before me. I'll have a consideration of the papers. I will look at whatever the legal principles are that are involved in the matter, and I will make sure that I am fully researched on the topic before I enter a court so that I can engage meaningfully on the issues in dispute between the parties as well as the applicable legal principles, and I will do that.
Yes, and the leading cases you may want to start with are Bear, Alexco, Maelane, Gqeberha. Should I go on, Deputy Chief Justice?
Thank you. My pen isn't working, but I'll be sure to watch the recording. Thank you very much.
Let's not risk overkill, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, DCJ. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning.
I want to ask you about something that has triggered my mind, and I'm not really sure what the correct answer is, and I'm hoping that you will be able to assist me. There is a case that you said with the then Deputy Judge President Van Zyl. It is Vabasa versus Master of the Eastern Cape, High Court. You remember that matter?
I do remember the matter.
Yes. I'm not going to ask you about the general facts of it. I'm just interested in the approach. And when I read the judgment, it really triggered this question to me. When somebody applies to review the decision taken by the Master of the High Court to appoint an executor or an executrix, what is the right process that that person should use? Is the person supposed to review in terms of perjure and comply with the requirement of perjure? Or should the person actually review in terms of the Administration of Deceased Estates Act, because it does provide a section for review, Section 95?
Yes.
Because I was quite interested in your judgment. You deal with the section, then immediately after the section, you go to perjure.
Yes, correct.
And when you go to perjure, you don't even deal with Rule 53 of the Uniform Rules of Court. So I'm just trying to understand what is the procedure that litigants should use. Should they review that decision through perjure and then use Rule 53, or can they rely on the review procedure provided by the Act itself? What is the right procedure? Because it seems like here you kind of like club them together, which is quite worrying for me. I just want to understand what is the right procedure.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if you have a page number for that case. I just wanted to once again have regard to Section 95.
Page
I know that we deal with.
Page 125. And I'm more interested in paragraph 39.
Thank you. That's the paragraph I'm looking for.
And 40 and 41 of your judgment. That's where my question really is based.
Yes, I'm just trying to find where I specifically quote Section 95. I'm not sure where I have it now, but how I...
It's paragraph 39.
No, I'm unfortunately not finding it, but how I see the legislation and how I rationalize it in my mind at the time was this. Was that Section 95 provides that the decisions are reviewable. So that's the starting point. The decision is reviewable. What is the procedure that we're going to use for that review, and what further rules are applicable to that? And I saw that as then a review within the context of PAJA, and then the rules of court would come into play. So I don't see it as the section in the Act providing for a self-standing review on its own in isolation to the remainder of the applicable law.
Okay, I guess this is my question. As a litigant, when I draft my papers, do I have to rely on PAJA and comply with the procedural requirements that are put on PAJA? Because what PAJA does, also you have to rely on certain provisions to indicate as to where the actual issue is. Or can I rely directly on this review procedure and say, I'm allowed to review in terms of this particular legislation? I'm not really sure what the correct answer is. I just want to get your view on it.
Yes, I really wish I could find Section 95 in my judgment. It would really assist in me explaining my view on the topic. But I see it as a PAJA review, and I'm not sure if that's answering your question. I certainly see it as a PAJA review.
No, it's fine. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, DCJ. Good morning, Advocate Brunt.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Mine is just on the issue of gender specifically. There are 2 out of 7, 2 of the 7 judges are at the Gqeberha bench are women. Do you think that is adequate?
I don't think that's adequate, and the reason I say that is if you look at the composition of gender in South Africa, for example, we're sitting at approximately 51% are women and 49% are men. So the bench has to be reflective of that insofar as it is possible to do so. So there's certainly a disparity between the number of male members of the bench and female members of the bench in the Gqeberha bar, at the Gqeberha bench.
Okay, but just, I was a bit surprised in your response to Commissioner Matolo Dlepu's question relating to the shortage of women silks, that you didn't really have much to say. So my concern is, if you're concerned about gender or representation of women, isn't that something that you should be concerned about and be thinking about and suggesting solutions to, rather than just saying, well, I don't know?
Perhaps I didn't understand the question correctly. It's certainly not a case of I'm sitting back saying, I don't know. I think first and foremost, what's important is that we foster an environment where there can be strong female practitioners, which would lend itself to the appointment of silk. And quite certainly that has been my experience at the Gqeberha bar. We have strong female practitioners, and there certainly are a number of up-and-coming female practitioners who will be able to avail themselves for silk status. So I think that's really where it comes from, is that I haven't seen an issue at my local bar, because everybody has done what they can insofar as transformation is concerned. And certainly from the time that I joined the bar in 2010 to now, there's been a massive shift in a male-dominated bar to something that is more representative of our community. And certainly the female practitioners have been provided with the opportunities that need to be provided to them to enable them to reach the status, to enable them to take silk. I hope that...
Okay, how many male silks have you got at the bar and how many female?
We only have 2 female silks. I'm not sure of the actual number of male silks.
Roughly?
Roughly about 8. We've seen female practitioners. There was 1 female practitioner which would have been eligible for silk, but then she joined the bench.
So what has been done to encourage women advocates to take silk?
I think the main problem that we have at the Gqeberha bar is that we have a very bottom-heavy composition of the bar. So there are a lot of female baby juniors. There are a lot of female middle, say, senior juniors who haven't quite reached that stage of their practice. But just with the natural progression of time, certainly within the next 2 or 3 years, that's going to become a reality, and there are going to be a number of female practitioners who will be able to take silk.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, DCJ. Good morning, Advocate Barnes.
Good morning, Commissioner.
I just want to check that I understood your answer to the Deputy Minister correctly. That in your assessment, the environment at your bar is such that it allows women to develop and to prosper, and their practices to grow.
That's correct.
So you don't see yourself as having suffered any kind of structural difficulties in building and maintaining a busy civil practice?
I must be completely honest, I haven't had any difficulties. In fact, I've found the members of the bar to take young female practitioners under their wing and involve them in their matters, to assist them in the attainment of skills that are necessary. And everybody has always had an open door policy and has made it clear that if there's anything that we require, we must please seek guidance. And in that way, certainly I've never experienced it.
Can I understand, as I understand your application, you have one appearance in the Constitutional Court and one in the Supreme Court of Appeal?
Yes, 1 in the Constitutional Court and 2 in the Supreme Court of Appeal.
And in all 3 matters, you were led by via Silk.
That's correct.
Have you ever appeared on your own in the SCA or in the CC?
I unfortunately haven't had occasion to do that. I was briefed in a Supreme Court of Appeal matter in which I was going to appear on my own, and that was in the third term of last year, but unfortunately, or fortunately, I had taken up the acting appointment.
And why do you think that is, that you have never had the opportunity to appear in either the SCA or the CC?
I don't really have an answer for that other than to say that perhaps my practice wasn't at the time viewed as something where the attorney would brief me on my own for the Supreme Court of Appeal, and certainly my practice has come to that level, which was why I received that brief.
DCJ, I'm going to leave it there. No further questions.
A follow-up, CJ? Follow-up, DCJ? Judge, I just want to ask something based on what Commissioner Pillay said. In South Africa today, there is a worrying issue that it's good when people say women are being assisted, but there is this concern that not women, or not all women are being assisted, especially black women are being assisted. I just want to understand, when you are saying that there are no, or you personally do not experience that structural issue, what about black females in the bar? Do we have a situation whereby white senior counsels are also affording them the opportunities that they afforded you?
Again, I can only answer from a Gqeberha bar perspective, and certainly there's been a very large shift to affording young black women those opportunities, and they routinely appear together with white male silks in various matters across the board, in the High Court, in the Appeal Court, in the Supreme Court of Appeal, and the Constitutional Court. And it is warming to be able to see that that transformation has taken place.
Thank you very much. Thank you, DCJ.
Any questions from this floor, colleagues? Colleagues on the virtual platform, do you have for this candidate?
It seems there are no questions, DCJ.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnard. Well, oh, did I hear a voice?
Yes, it's Premier Mabuyane.
Yes, Premier.
Just a comment, probably might not necessarily require a response to Advocate Barnes. Good morning. I didn't greet you earlier on. My apologies.
Good morning.
I've learned that you have done a lot of work in helping young disadvantaged girls, particularly from Motherwell, to become lawyers.
Is
that true?
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It does appear that we've reached the end of your interview, Ms. Spence. Thank you so much for making the time. I've enjoyed your answers.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much to the Commission for having me. Thank you.
Right. You're excused.